What's going on, Serpa Squad? Tanner here, and I'm back with something a little different. In this one I'll show you how I made a small tabletop waterfall that you can put just about anywhere. You don't need much to make something like this, and I thought it was a really fun project. Let's get started. I don't have everything needed just yet, but to start I have an acrylic organizer tray, a mini aquarium pump, slate stone, Manzanita Driftwood, and cyanoacrylate superglue. For those of you who always ask, I'll leave a list of materials that I'm using down in the video description. To get started, I put the pump in the back corner of the tray and filled it up with water. I wanted to test the pump to see where the water level needed to be and to see how strong the pump was. To my surprise, it appears that the pump can actually move some water and is quite strong given the small size. I cut out a net pot to act as a cage to go over top of the pump. Initially my idea was to create a support for the rocks with the pot, but as you'll see later in the video, it wasn't needed. After that, I traced the outline of the container onto a piece of paper to make a guide. Working within the guide, I stacked up slate stones to get a feel for how I wanted the waterfall structure to look. After getting a sense of the direction I wanted to take, the stones were removed and I started again from the ground up. This time I glued the stones together with the super glue I showed earlier. I could have just stacked up the stones, but I wanted everything glued together in case the pump needs serviced. The stones have to fit together well and look somewhat like a natural formation, so as you can expect this is a somewhat meticulous process. I think the extra work is well worth the trouble though. Once I had the structure built up to a decent size, I placed it back in the tray. The hose was attached to the pump and snipped to a manageable length. Then I continued to stack up the stones like before. Eventually it was time to start incorporating the driftwood. In doing so, my vision was to make it look like the wood was nestled in areas of eroded stone. These two were glued in place to ensure that they stayed in a good location. To make the aesthetic even better, I stacked up and attached smaller stones along the edges. To complete the waterfall formation, I filled the gaps around the pump's output tube with silicone to better divert the flow of water. Now on to the rest of the scape. For this part of the design, my goal was to make it look like a branch fell into the water and broke into several pieces. In doing so, I laid out various sections of driftwood, matching them up with the sections that are already there, and glued them onto stone to keep them weighted down. Continuing with this theme, I stacked up slate stone in small piles. These didn't need glued together since they're not part of the waterfall. After all of that, here's how the preliminary scape looked. I think it looks great, but now we have to test the waterfall. I set the main structure in a Tupperware container, filled it up with water, and turned on the pump. Initially the flow was really low, but the pump is adjustable. I played around with the settings until I got the right amount of flow, not too slow and not too strong. Then I capped everything off with a small stone to direct the water down the rock formation. Everything works perfectly, so now it's time to set it up for real. I felt that the first organizer tray was too small for this project, so I upgraded to the larger one seen here. The waterfall structure was placed into the corner of the tray. From there, the rest of the scape that you saw earlier was transferred into this. Now it's time for the substrate. In this case I'm going easy on the plants, so I'll use exclusively a light color of sand. It was poured into the tray and distributed with my trusty fan brush. Once an even layer was in place, I sprayed everything down so that the sand would stay put. As is, the scape looks a little forced. To deal with that and complete the hardscape, I sprinkled smaller pieces of stone throughout the setup. This will soften the rocky edges of all the formations and make everything look a little more cohesive. Now on to the plants. To start, I have Liverwort, Sphagnum Moss, and Sphagnum Moss. These were added in cracks and crevices on the waterfall area to help blend everything together and add some nice pops of green. The next and final plant is Bucephalandra Wavy Green. For the time being, this will be the primary plant in the water feature. I think it will look great planted along all of the edges of the driftwood. Here's the final design. Let's get it filled with water and running. I don't know about you, but I think this is a nice looking setup. It's a very minimal type of setup, but that's exactly how I wanted it to look. Simple and elegant. The waterfall structure draws your eye into the scape, and the cascading trickle of water draws your eye into the open water, which is intentionally lightly planted. It's an area where your mind can drift and relax. That's how I view it, at least. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments though. I personally think it turned out great. Anyway, I really hope you all enjoyed this and found it inspiring to take on some projects of your own. I'll catch you all in the next one, Serpa Squad. Take care and peace.